In the world of scams and cons, there's one story that stands out. Imagine selling an imaginary airport for a mind-blowing $242 million and getting away with it. That's exactly what we're going to unravel today. Welcome to Clever Crooks, the channel where we explore the most fascinating and outrageous stories of fraud, deception, and crime. We'll immerse ourselves in the incredible tale of Emmanuel Nwude. But before we dive into the audacious heist that Emmanuel pulled off. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you won't miss any of our captivating true crime stories. As we journey through the world of Clever Crooks, prepare to be amazed. Our adventure begins now. The story begins in the mid-1990s, when Nigeria was undergoing a period of political and economic turmoil. The country was ruled by a military dictatorship that was accused of corruption, human rights violations, and mismanagement of resources. The currency was devalued, inflation was high, and poverty was widespread. Many Nigerians were looking for ways to escape the harsh realities of their situation, and some resorted to illegal activities such as drug trafficking, money laundering, and advance fee fraud. Advance fee fraud, also known as 419 fraud after the section of the Nigerian Criminal Code that deals with it, is a type of scam that involves promising a large sum of money or a valuable reward in exchange for a small upfront payment or personal information. The scammer usually poses as a wealthy or influential person who needs help with a financial or legal problem, such as transferring money out of a war-torn country, claiming an inheritance, or securing a business deal. The scammer then asks the victim to pay a fee or provide their bank account details to facilitate the transaction. But once they receive the money or information, they disappear without delivering on their promise. One of the most notorious perpetrators of this kind of scam was Emmanuel Nwude Odenigwe, popularly known as Awel of Abagana. He was a former director of Union Bank of Nigeria, one of the largest banks in the country. He had access to privileged information and contacts in the banking sector, which he used to his advantage in his fraudulent schemes. He was also known for his lavish lifestyle and flamboyant personality. He owned several properties, cars, and businesses in Nigeria and abroad. He was married to 4 wives and had many children. He was also involved in politics and social affairs in his hometown of Abagana, where he was revered as a traditional leader and benefactor. The scam that made Nwude famous, or infamous, began in 1995, when he decided to target Banko Noroeste, a Brazilian bank based in São Paulo. He had learned from one of his sources that the bank was looking for opportunities to invest in Africa, especially in Nigeria, which had recently restored democracy and was opening up its economy to foreign investors. Nwude saw this as a golden opportunity to pull off his biggest con yet. He contacted Nelson Sakaguchi, a director at Banko Noroeste who was in charge of international operations. He introduced himself as Paul Ogwuma, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria at the time. He told Sakaguchi that he had an exclusive offer for him. He could invest in a new airport project in Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, which was under construction at the time. He claimed that the project was worth $6 billion, but he could sell him a 10% stake for only $242 million. He said that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make huge profits and gain influence in Africa's largest economy. Sakaguchi was intrigued by the offer, but he was also cautious. He asked for proof of Nwude's identity and authority. Nwude sent him fake documents and certificates bearing official seals and signatures. He also arranged for phone calls with other accomplices who pretended to be high-ranking officials from the Nigerian government and the airport authority. He even hired actors to play these roles in person when Sakaguchi visited Nigeria to inspect the site of the airport. Sakaguchi was impressed by what he saw and heard. He believed that he had found a legitimate and lucrative deal. He agreed to pay $242 million for the airport project, but he wanted to do it discreetly to avoid attracting attention from other investors or competitors. He asked Nwude to set up an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, where he could transfer the money without raising any suspicion. Nwude agreed to this arrangement, but he had a different plan in mind. He opened an account in the name of a shell company called FIBA International, which he claimed was a subsidiary of the airport authority. He then instructed Sakaguchi to wire the money to this account in installments over a period of 3 years, from 1995 to 1998. He told him that this was necessary to avoid taxes and fees, and to ensure the smooth completion of the project. Sakaguchi complied with Nwude's instructions. He transferred a total of $191 million in cash to the FIBA account, and the remaining $51 million in the form of outstanding interest. He did this without informing or consulting anyone else at Banko Noroeste, not even his superiors or colleagues. He trusted Nwude completely, and he expected to receive his share of the airport profits soon. However, he was in for a rude shock. The airport project was a complete hoax. There was no such thing as FIBA International. The account in the Cayman Islands was controlled by Nwude and his associates. They had siphoned off the money and used it for their own purposes. They had bought properties, cars, businesses, and other assets in Nigeria and abroad. They had also bribed some Nigerian officials and bankers to cover up their tracks and protect their interests. Sakaguchi had fallen victim to one of the most elaborate and audacious scams ever devised. He had lost $242 million of his own and his bank's money to a fraudster who had sold him an imaginary airport. The scam was discovered in December 1997, when Banco Santander, a Spanish bank, expressed interest in acquiring Banko Noroeste. As part of the due diligence process, Santander officials asked for details about Noroeste's international operations and assets. They were surprised to learn that Noroeste had invested $242 million in an airport project in Nigeria, which accounted for 40% of its net worth and 50% of its capital. They were even more shocked when they realized that there was no evidence or documentation to support this investment. There was no contract, no invoice, no receipt, no audit report, no progress report, nothing. The only thing they found was a bank statement showing that the money had been transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands belonging to a company called FIBA International. They immediately suspected that something was wrong. They contacted Sakaguchi and asked him to explain himself. Sakaguchi tried to defend himself and justify his actions. He claimed that he had done everything according to Nwude's instructions, and that he had seen and verified the airport project himself. He said that he was expecting to receive his returns soon, and that everything was under control. However, his explanations did not convince anyone. Santander officials contacted the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Airport Authority, and confirmed that there was no such project or company as FIBA International. They also contacted Interpol and other law enforcement agencies, and launched a criminal investigation into the matter. They soon discovered that Sakaguchi had been duped by Nwude and his accomplices, who had used fake identities, documents, phone calls, and visits to deceive him. They also traced the money trail and found out that Nwude and his associates had laundered the money through various banks and accounts in different countries. They realized that they had uncovered one of the biggest scams in banking history, which had resulted in the loss of $242 million to a Nigerian fraudster who had sold an imaginary airport. The exposure of the scam had devastating effects for everyone involved. For Sakaguchi, it meant the end of his career and reputation. He was arrested at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport in January 1998, while he was on his way to Switzerland to face charges related to opening bank accounts there as part of the scam. He was extradited to Brazil, where he faced trial for fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, breach of trust, and other crimes. He pleaded guilty and cooperated with the authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but he served only 4 years before being released on parole in 2002. He also agreed to pay back $242 million to Banko Noroeste as restitution. For Banko Noroeste, it meant the collapse of its business and reputation. It was forced to sell its assets and operations to Banco Santander, which took over the bank in 1998. It also faced lawsuits and investigations from regulators, shareholders, creditors, and customers, who demanded compensation and accountability for the scam. It was eventually declared bankrupt and dissolved in 2001. For Nwude and his accomplices, it meant the loss of their freedom and fortune. They were arrested and charged with fraud, money laundering, forgery, conspiracy, and other offenses in Nigeria and other countries. They faced trial in various courts and jurisdictions, where they faced different outcomes and sentences. Some of them were convicted and jailed, some of them were acquitted or released on bail, some of them fled or disappeared, and some of them died or were killed. Nwude himself was arrested in 1999, after a lengthy manhunt by the Nigerian police and Interpol. He was tried in a special court set up by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, a Nigerian anti-corruption agency. He pleaded not guilty and claimed that he was innocent. He argued that he had acted as a middleman between Sakaguchi and the real airport authorities, and that he had delivered the money to them as agreed. He also claimed that he had been framed by his enemies and rivals, who wanted to destroy him and take his wealth. However, his defense did not hold up in court. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence against him, including documents, testimonies, bank records, phone records, and assets. They proved that he had masterminded the scam and benefited from it. They also showed that he had tried to obstruct justice by bribing judges, witnesses, lawyers, and officials. They demanded that he be punished severely for his crimes. The judge agreed with the prosecution and found Nwude guilty on all counts. He sentenced him to 25 years in prison and ordered him to forfeit $121 million worth of assets to the Nigerian government. He also ordered him to pay $10 million as compensation to Banko Noroeste. However, Nwude did not accept his fate quietly. He appealed his conviction and sentence several times, but he was unsuccessful. He also tried to escape from prison several times, but he was caught. He also got involved in other legal troubles, such as assaulting a police officer, kidnapping a bank manager, and murdering a village chief. He is still serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Nigeria. The scam had lasting impacts for Nigeria and the world. It tarnished Nigeria's image and reputation as a country plagued by corruption and crime. It damaged Nigeria's relations with Brazil and other countries that were affected by the scam. It also exposed the weaknesses and loopholes in the banking system and the legal system that allowed such scams to happen. It prompted reforms and regulations to prevent and combat such scams in the future. It also raised awareness and caution among the public about the dangers and risks of advance fee frauds. It made people more skeptical and vigilant about offers that seemed too good to be true. It also inspired books, documentaries, podcasts, articles, and other media that explored and analyzed the scam and its implications. The scam also became a legend and a lesson for scammers and victims alike. It showed how far scammers can go to deceive their victims, how much victims can lose to their greed or ignorance, and how hard it is to recover from such losses. It also showed how justice can be served or denied for scammers or victims depending on the circumstances. The scam was one of the most remarkable stories of clever crooks ever told. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more stories of clever crooks. Also, don't forget to comment below and let us know what you think of this scam and its aftermath. Do you think Nwude deserved his punishment? Do you think Sakaguchi was naive or unlucky? Do you think Banko Noroeste could have prevented or detected the scam earlier? We would love to hear your opinions and feedback. That's all for today. Thank you for your time and attention. See you next time on Clever Crooks. Bye.